A warm welcome to everyone from Builders Merchants News and the IPG, the largest and fastest growing membership group for plumbing and heating specialists, to this virtual roundtable debate. We've teamed up this afternoon, Tuesday the 19th of January 2021, to discuss the ongoing issues faced specifically by the heating and plumbing sector. The topics will be posed in a discussion format and the debate will be chaired by myself, Tim Wood, editor of Builders Merchants News. May I ask each of you to say your name and job title, please? Robin.
Hello, I'm Robin Beal, founder and chairman of the IPG.
Glenn.
Hiya, I'm Glenn Fisher and I'm the managing director for the IPG.
Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul Cosgrove and I'm a director at Castle Plumbing Supplies.
Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jen Hollingshead and I am a director at First Choice Heating Direct and Snug Underfloor Heating.
Gareth.
Hi Tim, Gareth Griffiths, Sales Director, Merchant and Showroom at Bristan Group.
Thanks, Gareth. Nick?
Nick Khaira, Owner, Director of Unique Plumbing Supplies.
David?
David Merrick, I'm the Group MD at the Linthwaite Group, incorporating Davant.
And Andrew?
Hi, I'm Andrew Surtees, Sales Director of Mueller Europe.
Okay, thank you everybody. Just to let you know, the debate will be videoed, recorded and transcribed and will appear in the IPG supplement that will be contained within the February edition of Builders Merchants News. Sound bites and full video will be used across both the IPG and BMN's websites and social media platforms. Everything that is said today is on the record unless I'm told otherwise. So, if everyone's ready, I'd like to start with the first question. When is a buying group not a buying group? I don't know whether Glenn or Robin, as members of the particular buying group, want to start or somebody else wants to kick it off, but fire away somebody.
Sure. Robin, can I delegate that one up to you?
You can, yes. I think
For
it's
us
going to be
along.
right otherwise. When I saw that question at first, I thought that's a strange question, but then the more I think about it, it's actually a very relevant question. Yeah, a typical buying group, I guess, which is nothing wrong with that. Their aim, I think, generally speaking, be fair to say, is to obtain the best purchase in terms from suppliers for their members. Still got that flashing, haven't I? It's obviously not the curtain. I don't know what that is. Apologies. And IPG do so much more than that. But before I leave that point of, if you like, leveraging terms from suppliers, I think it's fair to say that what IPG do, in order to secure the best deals, we seek a win-win with suppliers by developing a strategy to increase their brand awareness. I think that's what, to some extent, sets us apart in terms of that. But of course, we do so much more, which we'll come on to during the meeting. But we do so much more in terms of helping our members generally with their business development. And that may sound very broad, but it really depends on the members' needs. Not all members' needs are the same. And what we do is we help members where we believe they need that help the most, whether that's their finance, their IT, their marketing, their systems, you know, whatever it might be.
Ben, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that something that Robin and I discuss regularly with the wider team here at the IPG is, like Robin said, buying groups are great and they serve a fantastic purpose. We obviously believe in that and support it, but we've played with the phrase, you know, a selling group or a membership group, and really what we're trying to do is build up our members and suppliers brands. That's what we're trying to do, because what an independent can't do is advertise themselves and become recognizable on a national scale, and with the IPG's brand supporting them, they can, you know, and that consumer, whether it's a plumber, whether it's an installer, whether it's a homeowner looking to redesign their bathroom, we want them to look at independents rather than nationals. You know, put it as simple as that. And therefore, whether we're talking about, you know, Dave's Plumbing Supplies or Glenn's Bathrooms, we know that them on their own can't be that recognisable national brand. It's impossible. But with the support of someone like the IPG, they can, and we can drive footfall to their locations. That's what we're trying to do, and therefore, you know, getting them more sales as well as allowing them to buy better. So yeah, I think that's the ambition, and you know, we're grateful for the support that our members and our suppliers provide us with that. You know, of course, we're here with David from Davant, Gareth, Bristan, Jennifer from Snug, and Andrew from Yorkshire, and you all support us in your own ways. But I know, Gareth, you've been particularly supportive with helping our members get digital screens in our member locations, which are IPG suppliers.
Yeah, I agree with what you both said. I mean, the traditional view in the plumbing and heating market, the buying group, is, you know, it's smaller independent grouping together to maximise their buying power.
Yeah.
That's generally what the traditional view has been. But, you know, certainly from a supplier's point of view, I believe, you know, IPG offers something quite unique in the market from that point of view. And you've already touched on the branding piece. So, you know, the guys still trade under their own individual company names, which they'd want to do, obviously, but you're trying to bring the power from the IPG brand by raising awareness to installers and consumers. And you touched on some of the kind of more innovative things you guys are doing. So, yeah, the screens in branch and your e-commerce drive, it means for me as a brand, I get a professional, consistent view of the brand put across to your customers. And that's what is quite tricky for any brand, really. And I think the other piece is your compliance model. That to me as a supplier is, you know, that's gold dust, really, because your members benefit from buying off your deals, which is obviously what we're from. And then the final piece will be the collaboration. So as you know, I mean, you know, obviously my guys in the field at ground level are talking to your individual branches, but my marketing team are talking to your marketing team, the systems guys, you know, product management were getting involved. So it's a whole collaborative approach that I think makes you guys quite unique.
Yeah, I'd second that in terms of, like, you know, we don't really see the IPG as a buying group as such. They're more of a partner, kind of working, especially with the marketing team, kind of to build those, like you said, Robin, about kind of building that like annual strategy, and what we're going to turn on as a kind of as two partners to help the members. I think it's vital, and I think it's, yeah, it just sets you apart from the rest, absolutely, because we can deliver stuff together that as a brand and these individual merchants can't necessarily do as well without each other. So yeah, collaboration for me is the key word.
Yeah, I mean, speaking from a member's point of view, we joined the IPG within the first sort of dozen or so members, and when we joined, it was a buying group, you know, but there was nothing else in the marketplace, so we were just looking at buying groups. And as time has evolved, and over the last years, IPG have come to us and they've sort of said, well, look, how about we can help you strengthen your marketing? How about we can bring you business? You know, and it's all completely different to any other group could offer. So it just gives us that extra man in the office, almost. It's given us that team behind us, which we don't have. We're a small independent merchant. Our goal every day is to come in, serve customers, and make sure they go away happy. We don't have the time to look into how can we increase our marketing? How can we make ourselves come across more professional to customers? So they're not just coming into Arkwright's shed and picking up bits and pieces. So it's given us that extra support as a business to help us move forward, which has been a huge asset for us to have the IPG.
David, as a member yourself, what have you gained from being with the IPG?
Yeah, I'm a supplier into IPG.
Okay.
You want me to just cover a couple of points?
Sorry?
Yeah. Shall I cover a couple of points? we've been a supplier into IPG from fairly early doors, and I just develop a couple of points that other people have mentioned, really, which is, to start with, is really that traditional buying groups are maybe up to 20 members, and they're as people have said, they're all clubbing together to maximise their buying potential. But that's also a limiting factor for them, because there is some entrenched interest there, as well as the buying group interest. Whereas IPG are all about their members, aren't they? So there's less limits from their point of view. They're truly nationwide. They've got 150-ish members, as against maybe up to 20 that a buying group might have, and so they see a bigger picture. So that's how I saw it starting. First of all, when IPG came into the industry, then the other thing that I think IPG have been able to provide for their independent merchant members is they've been able to widen their scope as well. So a small independent builders merchant has to wear so many hats when they're conducting their business. So they might be doing, one day they might be negotiating with a bank, another day they might be serving on the trade counter. So they don't necessarily get that time to really think outside the box on their business. And I see that where IPG comes in and just helps expand their vision and their mind. And I think finally, from a supplier perspective, then I think they've helped break some of the stranglehold of the traditional brands, so that they've brought in a wider string of suppliers at the initial outset, when maybe the big brands weren't beating a path to IPG's door. So IPG developed some other manufacturers' brands, and that's certainly helped our business. And obviously now that's gone full circle, because the big brands are actually knocking down IPG's doors and saying we'd like to supply.
Nick, Andrew, would you like to come in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to go first, Nick?
Oh, you go first, Andrew. That's fine.
Okay, I'm going to echo what the other guys have said, but my view of the traditional buying groups is that they were quite elitist, and you were classed as a privileged person if you were invited to be a member or a supplier. And I've never felt that with the IPG. And when Robin sold the vision a long time ago, I thought it was ambitious, and I thought he had a lot of his work cut out to achieve what he said he wanted to do. But I think a bit of lateral thinking and thinking outside the box, and not doing it the traditional way, has helped to open up a sector of the market and made it a lot more professional than it historically ever has been. And they've been probing, or that's the IPG, they've been challenging. They've certainly helped the members, and they've taken, I think Dave's absolutely right, some of the, shall we say, more well-known brands were very reluctant in the early days, and I think they might be regretting that decision now. But for me, it's the innovation. It's a completely new way of going to the market, if you like, linking the supplier with the independent member, and caring about the results on both sides. So I think IPG have helped to transform the market, and I think they will continue to do that. And I think as suppliers, the market's definitely changing. I've watched a bit of your roundtable debate that you were published a couple of weeks ago, and it was about changing market, and it will change. And I think IPG have been instrumental in quite a lot of that change over the last few years. So well done.
Yeah, Robin, that's quite a testimonial there, isn't it?
I tried to write it down.
Hard work. Okay, Nick, did you want to say something?
Yeah, sure. From someone who obviously knows IPG, but I've got a couple of other guys that have been a lot more involved in the initial dealings and the day-to-day dealings. So I'm sort of looking from the outside, and what I see and what I like in particular is the sense of being local in a way that, as an independent merchant, we want to feel very connected to our customers. We want them to like us. We're selling our service, obviously, but there's a much more personal element than national merchants, and I do feel that with IPG and in the small dealings that I've had with Robin and Glenn, and before that their local guy. It just, you just felt important. You felt valued and you felt worthwhile. Obviously, we're now going into the sort of business development that Glenn was talking about, and the screens and the branding. And I'm not sure how far Paul's gone down the road, if he has it all. But obviously, this is a venture we're just starting out on, and it's quite exciting, and I can sort of see the end game of that. And again, you feel part of it. You feel more like a partner than perhaps a customer.
Yeah.
And from my point of view, running the business, I'm much more involved on the financial side. And listen, the rebates are good. I like the tier structure. The objectives, there's something to aim for, and also the open market. I'm not sure whether, for example, we would have had such access to Worcester Bosch boilers. They're the market leader. Let's be honest. I like to sell maybe other products, but they are the market leader, and through IPG we have got that market that enables us to be competitive with, the likes of Wolseley and Travis. So, as I say, looking from a little bit of a distance, it looks a great relationship at the moment, partnership even.
Okay, seems like one big happy family, really, from what I can tell. Okay, does anyone want to add to anything they said previously, responding to a comment made by anybody else on the debate?
I'll just add something, Tim, which is interesting, that Paul and Nick both started off with their customer, and of course it's important. We're talking here as supplier, member, and IPG is in the middle, as one big partnership. But we have to remember who the customer is, and it's easy to forget that. And whether it's copper tube you're selling, or whatever, really, it's the person that walks into Paul or Nick's trade counter or bathroom showroom that's important, and that's who we've got to inspire to shop local, isn't it? That's the aim of the game.
Okay.
There's a technical point. I think I know why my screen keeps flashing, but it's when I move. I need to
Don't move.
Don't move, Robin.
No. Stay still for the next 90 minutes or so.
Yeah, no dancing.
No pressure.
I would say, because it's very flattering of what you've said so far, and that's just scary, because I was hoping we'd start off a bit badly. We can only go up. But
I think we should finish now, Robin, to be honest with you.
Too early.
Thanks, everyone. That's a wrap.
Important and included. That's because you are. Now, it's very cliche to say that, but if I can digress for just 1 minute. Did you all see the sad news about that guy in Hove that was walking his dog and got swept out to sea the day before yesterday?
No.
Horrendous.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's a guy who lives in Hove, and he walks his dog along by Hove Lagoon, and he literally got swept out to sea. They managed to they haven't found him, but they've called up. There was a huge search. Hundreds of police, scores of volunteers went looking, and they called it off, not because they found a body, but unfortunately somebody had some CCTV, and the police have, you know, checked it and they reckon that was him. So sadly he's gone. But they had his family. It was very touching on the TV last night. And as you often get, you know, wives and daughters and people saying, my dad was great, understandably. But one thing that really resonated with me is they said one of his daughters said, you know, my dad was the life and soul of the party and people liked him. And I thought, yeah, lots of people say that. But then she said, but if my dad sat with somebody, for example, and said, how are things with you? That's because he really meant it. You think, well, yeah, you know, it's easy to just say, how are you? But yeah, I'm fine. Actually, my dog just died. Oh yeah, good. And how's everything else? Actually, you know, and I thought that really touched a nerve in me. And I thought, you know, we don't say it. It can sound very corny to say that you care, but we do care. We absolutely care about all our trading partners. And I've been quoted, and I'll continue to say it, that I think the way we work in our work life is and should be a business equivalent of like a marriage. You know, you shouldn't go into a marriage
and a family, yeah,
as a family, if you like, even better. And that's how we feel. So doesn't mean everything's perfect. Doesn't mean you won't have arguments. Look how many arguments go on in families. But that's where I think we're coming from. And collaboration has been mentioned a few times. I appreciate it. And I think collaboration starts with that T word of trust. You have to feel an element of trust, you know, to go to next steps. It kind of takes you to whatever that next step is, doesn't it? Whatever you do in life, if you feel I've got an element of trust here, you know, it gives you confidence to go to the next step. And in our journeys, all of our journeys, there's lots of steps.
But when you mentioned the trust there, you know, having the IPG name, as it's growing, that's what it's given the independent merchants. It's given them kudos. So people, over time, when they see these billboards going out and they see the websites and they see this IPG logo, when they see it on the front of your store or on your paperwork, or they just hear it in the branch, that's what gives these customers the trust. That you're not just a one-man band in a shed. You are part of something a lot bigger. So yeah.
We've only got to see the rise of the IPG as well. I know you've got the graphic on the website about where you've come since you were formed. It's a short space of time, but you really have sort of moved so quickly. You've evolved all the way through that time as well, and your membership's growing as well. So I think during times like this, where they really do need the support of the likes of the IPG, and you really, from what I've obviously published in BMN, you really have been supporting the people who are members of the IPG. So, you know, you can only tell by the way people are reacting to what you're doing.
Yeah, and it goes on from what Andrew said about other buying groups making people feel like you're an elitist to be part of them. You know, if you approach or talk to another buying group, they say, well, what can you do for me? What are you going to bring to our party? Whereas with the IPG, they're more, look what we can do for you. We can help you with this. It's not all one way, because they can actually give something back as well. Not just the debate, like you said, the other strings to the bow.
I think in fairness to Glenn and Robin and you guys as well, you'll probably know this better than we do, but you're not afraid to have the difficult conversations with members. If they haven't got the shared values, you guys have those conversations. And the same with suppliers. If it isn't working, you don't just carry on regardless. You're not afraid to have the difficult conversation.
Those conversations are always open and frank and pragmatic, so that you can kind of build a plan off the back of it. So it's not just a one-way conversation. It's kind of, it has longevity to it, and I think that's really important as well.
Yeah.
Okay, we move on to the second question. How important is brand strength in today's market? So I've actually broken it down to 3 different strands here. How is brand strength actually measured? What makes a strong brand? And what types of brands are there? You've got service, event, organisation, or the individual brand. So how important is brand strength, first of all, and then maybe other people could come in and answer some of the other bits there. Anyone want to start with that one?
Am I picking that up?
No, you go for it, Jennifer. After you.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we have a bit of a funny story actually in terms of kind of creating our brand, and it actually derived from our MD Stephen was in a networking event, and it was before Snug was born, and someone challenged him and said, well, what's your brand? And Stephen said, first floor heating direct. And they said, oh right, and what are your competitors? And he named kind of the top underfloor heating competitors that all kind of like warm up, etc., that all evoke kind of that feeling that you get from having warm feet and that warmth. And she challenged him. She went, well, yours isn't very catchy, is it? And it's not very memorable, and it doesn't evoke those feelings. And that's how our brand was kind of born. That kind of it was almost like a light bulb moment for him. And for us, the strength of our brand name Snug has been so powerful. You know, when you walk on a warm floor, you want to have that snug feeling, and kind of we kind of emulate that throughout all of our communications. And it's really been kind of the ground of how our brand has grown over these recent years. So I think it's absolutely vital kind of having a strong brand, something that's easy to remember, and kind of makes you feel like you understand what that feels like.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing point, because it is about how you feel. And whenever you consider a brand, you always think of a brand from a consumer perspective. You know, you're walking down the street and you see some fluorescent yellow or golden arches, and you familiarise that, and you feel hungry and you want to go there. But here's a question for you, Jennifer. You know, how do your employees feel about your brand? Because I think working for a brand that is well known and is very strong and a trusted brand, I really think that counts for something as well. Don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. We're a family business, and we so our employees have always been, well, we've always tried to make our employees feel like they are more than just employees. They're an extension of our family. And when we came up with Snug, there were a handful of different options, and we invited our team to kind of have their opinion and what they felt would be the best brand for us to move forward with. So they've been in it with us from day one, are fully behind it, and they get that feedback as well from talking to wholesalers, also kind of tradesmen that call us. You know, they might have seen us on social media, and kind of we ensure that our brand it's not just a name, it's not just a logo. We kind of try and feed that all the way through our products. So like our pipe is pink, and they love that. And so it's not just about having a logo and a name. It's all those different elements as well that kind of add to that bigger brand picture that your customers and their customers and your team all get behind. You know, it's
You're right. It's really hard to describe it, isn't it? And Robin will laugh. I won't tell the full story, but we had a phone call from a member last week who is very passionate about the IPG brand, I think it's fair to say. And I think he was ready to put his boxing gloves on and head down and sort someone out for us. And it's just, it's that, isn't it? It's being part of something bigger than the sum of all its parts. It just feels like you're part of something, and you're part of a team that's got your back, I think, as well.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to mention his IPG pants, Glenn.
And he has IPG pants as well.
That's your fault.
Just on the point of
afterwards, people, if you want to know about that, it's nothing to do with me.
Just on the point that Jennifer made there, I think the fact that you've got the whole company involved in the name, I think that just goes to show that people are going to be working around that brand going forward. So if they've got a choice in having input in the name of the brand, they're going to put a lot more into it as well, I think. And it's only 4 letters, but it's a very, very powerful brand there. You know, so that's a good way of looking at it, I think, getting everybody involved, and then they'll pay major attention.
Yeah.
Is anyone else to come in with anything about this?
I think for us, Tim, obviously within Bristan Group, we've got, you know, various strings to our bow, I guess, in terms of who we're trying to target and whether brand strength's important. Because from a bathroom consumer's point of view, you know, to be brutally honest, it's you do it once every 8 to 10 years if you're doing your bathroom. So actually, consumers only really know your brand at the point they start researching it and they're going through the project. So that's when you've got to be right in front of them with your brand. We've done loads of studies, loads of research on that, and within 6 months, people have forgotten the brand that they put in a lot of instances. And in fact, they're probably more likely to tell you where they bought it from rather than the brands they've put in, which is interesting. I think from an installer's point of view, though, for us, brand is still huge because they, you know, particularly with the replacement market, they play a massive part in recommending brands to the consumer. So, you know, we're doing things like we've set up an on-tap community to talk directly to installers to then direct them to the people that stock our products. So I think in that context, brand is obviously really important. And then obviously the new world, if your brand hasn't got a digital footprint these days, so, you know, you're not visible online somehow, you know, consumers and installers are going to potentially struggle to find you. So yeah, you know, brand is still clearly very important. Otherwise, us suppliers wouldn't bother investing so much in them, I guess.
And an interesting one on brands then is, so obviously brand's very important, but trust. I mean, like you said, a lot of people are researching the name Bristan when they come around to buy a bathroom, but they come into the merchant and they rely on the merchant to give them the advice and recommend. And I'm just thinking, like you said, with regards to brands, so the manufacturers are trying to get their brands out there, get in front of the installers, get in front of all these people. But I think sometimes a lot of them forget the merchants have a lot of input and they can actually change things. And I think that goes to show with the IPG. So again, when the IPG first started, it never had all the biggest brands. So it relied on the merchants to do their bit, to say, well, look, yes, okay, X is fantastic, but Y is just as good. It has this, it does this, it can do that. Because we are the actual salespeople for the big brands. So although, yeah, brand is massively important, I think sometimes it can get sort of lost along the way.
There is the element, of course, that we're saying brand as in a product with a brand. As Gareth alluded to, they might more likely to remember 6 months later where they bought it, and that is also the place they bought it as a brand. So you, Paul, and Nick, between you have got 10 locations, for example. All of those locations have a brand. They have a brand today. You know, I know we're talking about a bigger brand in addition to support that, but it actually does two things. I think it supports your local brand and introduces a supporting brand. So, you know, one doesn't conflict with the other. It supports it. But and of course, if we can, you know, link that with a product brand as well, be it Snug, Bristan, or whatever, then you've got three. But the important thing is the important thing is, can they remember anything? To come back to Gareth's sort of surveying, if you like, you know, Mr. or Mrs. Beal fitted a bathroom a year ago. Yeah, what bathroom did they fit and where did they buy it and you know, et cetera, et cetera. If they can't remember any of it, we're all sunk. But actually all bits in that journey are highly important. What would be?
I think some of it comes down to the experience that they have. So it's not, you know, it's about the service that they get. That's the memorable piece as well, isn't it? Definitely. Kind of when you're remembering how was that, how was it having a new bathroom? Well, they'll remember the experience they had from selecting those products to the installation to, they won't necessarily, you know, remember the brand, but they might remember the experience they had with that brand.
So doing your bathroom's a nightmare. It's a big project. I think, you know, to back up what Paul said, I think, you know, whether you say merchant or showroom or whatever, that guidance is absolutely like gold dust for a consumer, because it is a real pain in the backside trying to do your bathroom. And they'll often go to a showroom to get that advice, which is something that, you know, pure play online retailers struggle to replicate.
Yeah, I mean, and again with brands, there's a huge national merchant which changed its name. So it had its name for 30, 40 years. And then all of a sudden it was a big blue brand with a yellow tap on it, and then all of a sudden it changes to something red with a completely different name. And people used to say, oh, right, I need some plumbing bits for the house. I need a washing machine tap or something. Oh, I'll just sneak down to Plumbing Centre to pick it up. Then all of a sudden that's gone from the market. And you think that's a big decision for a brand that big to change its name overnight. So you sort of spent all that time building something, but it just goes to show that customers were relying on the brand.
I've got the same experience actually with gas safe register. You had Corgi for years and years and years, and from my time at HPM, I was writing stories, and people were saying they were knocking on the door, installers were knocking on the door and saying, "Where's the Corgi guy?" Even though he had a gas safe register in his card in his hand. So it's vital. You've got to, if you're going to change a brand, you've got to make sure that you get the publicity behind it. Throw some money at it as well, I think. But I think one other thing, just in what Jennifer said, I think when you're buying something, it's important. I also think the aftercare side of it is very important as well, because you could spend a lot of money on a bathroom, but if that goes wrong and the people aren't interested, they've done their bit, they've sold you the product, it's been installed, and they leave you hanging. I think the aftercare is just as much, and that'll be remembered even more so than the brand sometimes itself. So I think that's quite important.
We've actually got research on that, Tim, that says if you have a problem in your service experience, you'll often actually feel more satisfied if something goes wrong and it gets corrected well. And that's factual from research. That you're absolutely right. That if you get that aftercare right, that can often be more valuable.
I think your brand. Perhaps the stronger the brand, on the after service is when people are looking at products, especially maybe some that they're not familiar with, and maybe this is where the likes of Worcester and Valent are trying to tap into, is if they create a strong brand or a perceived strong brand with the end user, that will give that consumer a lot more confidence in that after services, as you said, Gareth, because obviously Bristan is a very, very strong brand, and I think that backs up your after service. What I found interesting about branding, obviously there's two types of branding. We're talking about our company branding, and then you've got the products that you sell, the brands. From our company point of view, I struggle with that one really. I'm not very qualified on it, if I'm really being honest. I don't actually necessarily know, to my shame maybe, what our brand means to our customers, because I've probably never really asked them directly. So I've just done a business management course actually, and this was an integral part of it. So it is on my list of things to do, to explore our brand and what it means and how important it is. But what are the most interesting thing about products? We talk about Worcester, Grundfos pumps, Fernox, and Bristan, and those sort of products that we're all familiar with, is how regionalised it is. And I've got a branch in Eastleigh where we started, and I've got a branch here in Hedge End, which is 4 or 5 miles away, arguably, well, a different, almost part of Southampton. And in Eastleigh, everyone wants a Grundfos pump. Everyone wants a Worcester boiler. Everyone wants a Bristan shower. Whereas in Hedge End, you can definitely diversify a lot more. It's not necessarily all about Worcester boilers. And I don't know if that's the history of Southampton, because Eastleigh was always a plumb centre Travis Perkins town. And I think we were the first independent merchant there. Whereas Southampton in the old days, City Plumbing, Jayards, etc., Williams. So, that just a side note on how interesting brands can be so localised, product brands, that is. But as I said, I do need to work on my company brand a little bit more, really.
Just to develop that a little bit. I think it's quite interesting how the three of the fastest growing businesses within our industry in the UK would be, we've talked about IPG, fastest growing buying group. but you have to also accept and recognise that people like Screwfix and Toolstation are some of the fastest growing brands in the UK, and they're not regional. And the reason that they're not regional is because they don't necessarily, they do have the big brands, but they also have developed a lot of products for a lot of different manufacturers, and they've used their own brand. They've used the Toolstation brand, the Screwfix brand, or in this particular case, the IPG brand, as if you like, almost like the Trustpilot. This product's fine. You're going to have no problem with it. And we're back to a situation where that, to my mind, is why IPG could potentially continue to outstrip any other buying groups, because there is a truly national perspective and scale to it.
Okay. Does anyone else want to add anything into that? That's brand strength, or should we move on?
I'll just say, as a manufacturer of a commodity product with 2 industry recognised brands, probably neither of those brands have got any consumer awareness at all. And I think Paul's absolutely right. When somebody walks into his branch, they're going to ask for copper tube. I don't think they're going to ask for Wednesbury copper tube or Yorkshire copper tube, and they're going to be very pleased with what Paul gives them. And I think, although most installers would recognise our brands and have a lot of confidence in those brands, which gets us all a lot of business, I'd need to spend tens of millions to get consumer awareness. And I still think if they walked in and asked for Yorkshire copper tube and Paul gave them something else, I still think they'd be quite happy. And I'd have spent tens of millions and I wouldn't be so happy. But it is such a difficult topic.
It is.
It all comes down to trust at the end of the day, doesn't it? Trust. It doesn't matter whether you're a consumer or an installer or a merchant. If you trust the brand that you work with, then and you share that trust, then people will buy into it. Yeah, I truly believe it all comes down to trust.
Does price?
But the branding is very much linked to the marketing, because you ask most people on the street, have you heard of a boiler, or what boilers have you heard of, and they might not necessarily come out with the names initially, but if you sort of say, well, have you heard of Worcester, have you heard of Ada? Oh yeah, definitely heard of them. And I think that leads on to a confidence, whether correctly or not, in the product. So as Andrew said, they're spending millions, maybe tens of millions of pounds on that, but they're making their brand stronger and arguably more not reliable, but they're trying to get the confidence of that consumer. So I think copper tube, I get what Andrew was saying, but I guess that's not necessarily a mechanical product. Maybe it's more about the products that are going to go wrong or not. But yeah.
When we first opened, I'm just thinking back, when we first opened one of our trade counters. When we first opened the first trade counter, if you like, we didn't quite know what to stock at the time. And we thought, right, okay, what do people know? They know Honeywell, Drayton, Danfoss, Grundfos. So let's put those products on the top shelf. So when people walk in, we affiliate ourselves with them. If we just put a load of white box products on the shelf, people wouldn't have had the same confidence in us. But because we affiliated ourselves with these brands, it gave us kudos as well. So we sort of rolled off the back of all their marketing that they had done to, that's how we did it.
Exactly.
Okay, move on to question 3. What will installers, plumbers need from independent merchants in the future? Talking about different services available.
People to fit it for them.
Get into something else at the moment, I should think.
I would say it falls into 3 things. Things
Okay.
that will save them time, anything that will save them money, and possibly more important than those 2 things, anything that will please their customer. If you're talking about an installer, for example, you know, be that a heating installer or a bathroom installer. If I was a installer, of course I'd be interested in something that saves me money for sure. I'd certainly be interested in something that can save me time. Let's say, for example, installation time or something like that, or procurement time, but something that would, you know, how can I please my customer over and above my competitors, I think would also be of great interest.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our guys aren't businessmen. They're tradespeople.
Yeah.
So they want to do a job and go home and get paid. So anything that we can do to help them get home quicker and not have to work those weekends, cut out the paperwork in the evenings, they'll just lap it up. That's what we find our customers most interested in. Time.
I think we've got to be conscious. Sorry, Glenn, was I cutting you off?
No, you crack on.
I just got to, yeah, I think Paul's exactly right, and we've still got that demographic of customer, tradesman likes to come in, have a cup of coffee when we're allowed to give them out, and, you know, stand on the counter, elbow, have a chat about this and that, and, you know, that's great because that's part of our service and that's what makes us strong. But as the younger guys come through, they want more innovative ways of, you know, even getting the stuff, collecting the stuff, paying for the stuff, getting the account records. And I think, you know, we're getting so used to, unfortunately, you know, what Screwfix are doing almost 24/7, obviously Amazon, etc. Everything is a lot more readily available, a lot more quicker. You know, literally the push of a button. And even though we haven't quite got that customer at the moment, they are coming through, and we do need to address that and keep up with that. Obviously, we don't have the resources of the likes of Screwfix and Toolstation, and certainly not Amazon, but there is a lot to think about that we could do better. And, you know, just with IPG and the e-commerce website is an opportunity that perhaps off our own back we wouldn't necessarily be overly interested at the moment, but because of their support in the availability, the pricing, it becomes an option that is much more available to us, much more appealing, and that then will keep us, you know, in line or up with the likes of your merchants that have that real strong online e-commerce presence.
So Nick and Paul, if I ask you, how at the moment do you interact with your customers? There's obviously this face-to-face when they walk in, email, telephone. Do you have virtual meetings with them at all? Do you use FaceTime or Zoom or Teams or anything like that?
No.
All right, move on. Question 4.
Remember I said this?
It might switch to a text message.
Yeah, I'll just the reason I'm asking it is that do plumbers and installers ever get onto a job and think, "God, I need some help here, and I don't quite know what to get, and I need to show." Paul will know this. Paul at Castle will know this. I'll give him a call, and actually, he could almost show you what he's working on. That's what I was thinking.
In one of the branches, they do a lot of boiler spares, and they're forever using their mobile phones because people are FaceTiming them. Oh, look, this is happening, this is clicking, that's not working, what do you think? Yeah, there's a lot of that goes on.
Yeah, because I think when we consider things like that, we'll talk about when we use Zoom and Teams, we always think about office environments. But my brother runs a very large engineering business that fits air conditioning. He's always using that to spec jobs, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's becoming more of the norm, certainly.
Yeah, I think it's becoming more of the norm at a local level, you know, as in, you know, the customer will ring up the branch, speak to Dave, the manager or whatever, and go, listen, I'll put you on FaceTime or whatever. And yeah, that's more than likely happening in terms of general talking to our customers. You know, there was the old days when you used to have a rep on the road and that's not the case anymore. And you know, emails, people are a little bit put off by marketing emails. You know, like you say, Glenn, it's sort of, you know, it goes back to a local level, and as Paul was saying, you know, people ringing up with their camera phone and doing that sort of communication, you know, which is great. I mean, we're all getting a lot more used to it at the moment, aren't we?
Yeah.
Just thinking from an independent point of view, they're doing more to support the local economy, aren't they? There's this myth that they're more expensive, and that isn't the case. And they're investing more in time and money into the community as well. They're actually doing things for local people. Has it gone away from the fact that people are now able to go into a branch and touch and feel a product and have that cup of tea? I mean, is that something that's way in the past now, or is it a time issue? Why are we going away from that?
We've got 2 different customer bases, if you like. We've got the guys that will come in. They'll come in at 9:30, 10 o'clock, stand and have a coffee, go to work at 11 o'clock, come back at 1 o'clock for another coffee, and they'll just enjoy being off the job and having a chat. And then we've got the other guys that come in at 7 o'clock in the morning because they want to be in before anyone. They don't want to see anyone. They just want to go to work and get the job done. And then they might come in at 4:45 to get the materials ready for the next day. So yeah, it's a bit of a mix.
So the first group of people, Paul, are they the older guy by any chance, and the younger ones want to be in at 7 and crack on?
The ones that, in the nicest of ways, we call them the penny pinchers. They're the proper. They care a lot about the money that they're making. They run a business. You know, they're there for one reason. They haven't got time to stand around and chat. They want to make sure that they're getting their prices, they're getting their invoices on time. They're the ones that pay their bills on time. Whereas the other guys, they come in throughout the day. They're a bit more like, yeah, look, it is what it is. Don't worry, we'll get there in the end. Whereas the ones that are in early in the morning, like, well, look, I'm here. You've got 10 minutes to serve me because I've got to go. Different mix.
Okay.
This is a brand. We find that a lot of the merchants that we work with actually really. So we will talk a lot to the installer, which will help alleviate the pressure when a merchant is busy. So quite a lot of the time, the installer will come to us. We'll help them with their job, their problems that are having. We'll even scope it out and then feed a shopping list through to the merchant to kind of just take the pressure off them a little bit. And I think that from a brand perspective and a supplier perspective, I think that's really important to be able to help, not only help the installer, but help the merchant as well kind of get on with their day if there are elements that they're not 100% on, because things like underfloor heating, you know, it's not your everyday boiler or kind of it's a different system, and sometimes it's knowledge that isn't necessarily historical, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think there's a piece there too.
I mean, from a wider market perspective, Tim, we're definitely seeing like a channel shift happening, and probably COVID's kind of hastened that a little bit. And the guys are absolutely right with what they've said already. You know, people like Screwfix and Toolstation, there's no doubt that, you know, they've seen extraordinary growth, really. And I think it's that word of convenience. That's kind of what they're seen to give. And whether you're an older or a younger installer, that you know, that might be appealing to you. I think the other thing we've had feedback on with those kind of customers is that standardised pricing. So, you know, people know exactly what they're paying, whether they go to one Screwfix or the next Screwfix, which apparently isn't always the case maybe with a national merchant branch. So I think there's maybe something around that. Whether the independents feel they need to offer click and collect, I don't know. These guys can probably answer that better than me, because I still think the bulk of the market is still an older installer that likes to do exactly what Paul said, go to the branch and knows the guys and knows he'll get a good service from them. Whereas probably a younger installer these days is using their phone, you know, digital methods. They want the least hassle. So I don't think, for me, I still think you're going to get some of the traditional parts of service that will stay just because COVID's happened. I don't think it will, you know, vastly change. I think we're creatures of habit, aren't we? We'll go back to what we sort of enjoyed doing in the first place. So one I'd like to get a view on actually is, because obviously, you know, people have been asking us about this as a supplier, is the concept of us delivering it to your customer for you, because that's something we've sort of been talking to, and it really splits opinion. So some merchants go, oh, no, we don't want you doing that for us. Whereas others are saying, yeah, we'd love that because it takes the hassle away. I'd just be interested to see what people's views are. Well, Nick and Paul, clearly, on that.
Go on.
Not for me. There's certain products that, you know, historically have been what you call direct deliveries.
Yeah.
But if you start having Bristan straight to the installer, you know, we've already got instances of, you know, bigger brands approaching, well, the end user maybe a little bit more. And yeah, I mean, it just sort of opens a precedent for, you know, the likes of Bristan thinking that, well, perhaps we don't need a merchant anymore. We're delivering to the installer. Why don't we just invoice them as well? You know, that would be short-sighted in my opinion. Generally, you know, the installers like dealing with merchants. You know, the big difference with Screwfix, I've seen firsthand exactly on a counter at Screwfix when somebody decided to ask a little bit of a technical question about a scale reducer. There was just a complete blank look on the other side of the counter and just said, it's just in page 47. And, you know, so there is still a strong case for merchants, but I wouldn't, to answer your question, Gareth, I wouldn't be a great advocate.
Well, often you want to put products with something else as well, don't you, Nick? So it's not just my.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Bundling it with other people's as well. So yeah. No, we've just had a really mixed bag of feedback. We've had people that have got your view. We've had people that say, "Oh yeah, that'd really help us if you could do that." But
can I answer Gareth a bit as well? I think I understand what you're saying. At the moment, I think the thing that you've just got to be totally mindful, and I'm sure you will, but what you're really saying is, if I ask 10 merchants or showrooms at the moment, what do they want? 5 might say this, and 5 might say that. Just ask yourself this. What will they all be saying in 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10 years' time? Because I think with respect to Nick's view, and I totally understand Nick's view, but they're always, this comes down to what we started off the conversation with about collaboration and partnerships and integrity and trust. You know, there's always going to be people that you can't have those things with. We know that, whether it's in our personal lives, in business, there always will be. And but hopefully there'll always be those that you can. So when you say there's incidents of manufacturers approaching, was the word you used, Nick, what Gareth's not talking about is approaching your customers, not at all. What he's talking about is you set up an e-commerce site, which hopefully we're doing for you, with you. And when you've got an e-commerce site, of course, stating the flipping obvious, there's 3 ways you can sell from it. You can advertise your stock, and you can sell it to them. You put it in a box and post it to them. You can do click and collect, which of course is that transaction where, again, you're accessing your stock and they just make the transaction online and come and collect it. But the third one, you don't need the stock for. And this is where we've got, I think it was you mentioned, Nick, Amazon earlier. I call the Amazon effect. Amazon is massive, isn't it? Biggest retailer in the world. They dwarf Screwfix by thousands of times, literally thousands. Screwfix and Toolstation combined wouldn't even equal 1% of Amazon's revenue or figures. They're massive. And the key thing I think about that, my wife uses Amazon all the time, because it comes tomorrow. It just comes. It's just there. It just gets delivered straight away. If it's got to be delivered, and it's okay saying, yeah, but I've got stock, and I get that, you know. But with the best will in the world, as a plumber's merchant or a showroom, there's only so much stock you can keep, and there's only, not just in volume terms, but in range terms. Somebody wants a blue one, not a red one, or a red one, not a blue one. There's only so much stock you can carry. And if someone is looking on your site for a product and they go, Bristan shower valve, click, I can have it straight away, but you haven't got it in stock. My view is there's a high chance you'll lose that order to someone that's got it in stock, regardless of price, because everyone just wants it. And I think the key thing is, to come back to Gareth's question, is how many people might change their view when they understand better or see in reality how that dynamic works. Not many of our members, Gareth, have got e-commerce websites, which is why we identified it as an opportunity, because we looked at our members, and as I said earlier, we're there to facilitate, if you like, what members want, not try and force things on them. We've got a couple of members who've got really good e-commerce websites. We're not trying to facilitate them. We help them with other things. But those that don't even have an e-commerce website won't really know till they get one. I think the dynamics of those three ways of selling, people keep saying, well, will it all be click and collect? How do you know until you've got it? Ultimately, it's what your customers want. But I suppose what I'm saying in a long run is I think a lot of your customers will want the product quickly, even if you don't have it in stock.
I think that's where you've probably seen the growth of Screwfix and Toolstation. So we've all used them in the past, and their catalogues are about thick. And how often do you go to a Screwfix branch and they haven't got the part that you want in stock?
I don't know, because I don't go there.
But they do. They seem to have a little of everything in stock.
Yeah.
And that's what our customers are now expecting from us. They can order from Amazon and get it same day, next day. They can order from Screwfix, get it next day. And that's where I think, like Bristan. So Bristan, you've got the delivery time before 10:30, 10 o'clock the next following morning. Most installers can live with that. Whereas I might order a tap from XYZ person and it might not turn up till 5 o'clock because that's the time the courier comes. So I think by Bristan doing that, they're sort of one step ahead already, because they're making sure that the merchant can get it as quick as possible.
And I would say do it, Gareth, because I don't think there's a downside. I think Nick would agree. Even if Nick, let's say, keeps the same view and in 5 years' time doesn't want you to supply that product that he takes an order for, that's still his prerogative to do so, and that won't threaten that. But if you don't do it, you are switching off the opportunity to others. And I say, if you ask those 10 people today, you might get 5 say no, 5 say yes. Tomorrow you'll get 8 people say yes, and the next day there'll be 9, etc. There might always be some that don't want it, but I think it can only move one direction. I think anybody saying to you now, we need this, won't be saying in the future, actually, we've changed our mind, Gareth. Unless you go stealing their customers, of course.
Well, yeah, just for the avoidance of doubt, I didn't mean us supplying direct and invoicing to the installer.
No, I know. But I understand Nick's concern there, because that would be ours as well.
Well, I think Nick's talking about past experiences that we've all seen in the market with other brands that have done it. So
we had one with a boiler company, to name nameless, but they literally started texting the installer would get a text the next day.
Can I chip in, because I share Nick's concerns, and my initial reaction is, Gareth, when you present something like that, is who are you going to be doing this with? And it comes back to trust and trust of your brand, because if you're going to be doing it with everyone, Tom, Dick and Harry, then what differentiates what Nick's offering from them? And I think that if you police it well, and you are very mindful of who you're engaging with in terms of your customer base, then I think I would be hugely reassured with that.
There's got to be a criteria around you having that service, clearly, because you still need people to support your brand.
Of course,
you wouldn't be doing it for somebody operating out of the garden shed.
Indeed, I think that's what most people have concerns about.
Okay, should we move on to the next one, which is?
I just come in quickly.
Sorry, David, go on.
I just come in quickly before we leave that, because something that Nick said just resonated with me, and that was that, and it is the big difference between an independent merchant and one of these online resellers, or even most of the time these days the big national groupings, is that the independent merchant has a more flexible approach. They're more nimble on their feet, And the big thing that installers will need from merchants, and they'll need from our independent merchants, is they will need that product knowledge that is, as we've said, is usually missing from an online reseller, and that's undoubtedly going to be what our installers and plumbers need. So we should remember that, and we should slant our marketing towards that, because you don't get that very many places that we've talked about. You don't really get it at Screwfix and Toolstation. You may not get it at a major grouping, but you will get it. You ordinarily 9 times out of 10 at a local independent merchants, because they have that knowledge.
I think they're more likely to tailor it to your particular needs as well. I think because they've got that relationship with you, haven't they?
Totally.
Okay, cool. We've touched on e-commerce and click and collect, and that moves us on to the next question. Are these likely to become the norm in the industry in the future? It's obviously, we've all touched on the time aspect of going into builder's merchant and having a cup of tea and a biscuit and talking about the football scores and that, but things have moved on. So how important is e-commerce going to be in the future? Maybe we can start with Robin, because you have set up this service to improve e-commerce for your members, haven't you? So you obviously think it's going to be very important going forward.
I think it's very important now. I really do, and I think it will going forward. I think it's fair to say that, you know, there's a high. I think you did a survey or published one, Tim, about a survey of how many journeys, consumer journeys, start online. You know, it was mentioned in the roundtable debate that Bristan hosted, and it's a high percentage, higher than a lot of people think, of journeys that start online. Of course, any retailer or merchant might say, yeah, well, it all depends on the ones that finish online, but that will, I believe, increase because that's all to do with the infrastructure and, as Jennifer said, the trust and all those other factors. So, yeah, I think for sure it will continue. It already is part of the journey and it's already a tool that people use. It's almost like saying, to use a car or a van to drive to where you shop. Well, you know, no, I walk. There's different ways of doing it. So it might not ever be the only way. The point I'm making is, I'm not saying for a minute, sell it, you know, get rid of your trade counter because everyone's going to buy online. I don't believe that. What I'm saying is it's going to be one of the elements that you need.
I think that even if a customer journey doesn't start online, it forms part of that journey, even halfway down it, because ultimately all of us as consumers go online to have that reinforcement that product or brand is the right product for you, and it gives that extra element of trust. It gives you that confidence, doesn't it? If you go to a wholesaler and they suggest a product, and you go home and you research it and you can't find anything online about it, then you're left wondering why is there nothing online about this product. So it can sometimes act as a more of a negative to not being there than being there.
Really good point, Jennifer. I've got a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, and every time we talk about anything we might do to our own house, they'll come back half an hour later with their iPads and go, "Look, Dad, I've just found this." And they're the future, aren't they? These are the future consumers.
The longer it goes on, and as the younger people come into the business, they more and more of them, they're going to want to do their business on the phones. They're not even going to want to do them on computers most of the time. They're going to want to do it on their phones. And that's why I think that those sort of you've got to develop it, and you've also got to develop that click and collect, because people like the competitors, the Screwfixes, etc. These guys are open 70 branches a year, 60, 70 branches a year, and you know, that we've said that they're nothing. They've got no particular product knowledge. They're just places where people can go and collect their product that they might have placed the night before. And I think as the new generations come into it, there'll be more and more of that going on.
Dave, I think you make a good point there, but to me, it is no great surprise that these guys have grown their market share. You're opening 60, 70 branches a year.
Yeah.
You're going to grow your market share. But you've got to remember, they're opening trade counters. That's what they're opening. But they are fantastic sales and marketing and logistics companies.
Absolutely.
They are tremendous at logistics. Their service levels are great. Somebody said if you go in there, you're going to get what you've gone in for.
Yeah.
And it's a trade counter.
So
that's what the independents have got to do as well. They've got to offer that local service.
Yeah, but they've got to keep playing to their strength. The independent merchants got to keep his strength, and they've got the knowledge. They've got that.
Absolutely.
They've got all the knowledge that people need. That's what they've got.
So even if it's click and collect, they are still expecting people to come to them.
Yeah.
The local guys have got that very same advantage. You've got the premises, you've got the knowledge, you've got to make that count locally, which then develops the trust and the repeat business. They'll always be better at doing it online because of their resources. They'll have marketing departments running into tens, maybe hundreds of people.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever are we going to compete.
No.
They're brilliant at it. So you've got to find the local need.
But IPG can help massively with the work they've got.
Yeah, hugely, because the independents on their own, the amount of time required to set that up, if you can tap into somebody who's doing it for you, the IPG you're doing it, setting up your platform, brilliant.
Yeah.
You've got to have a presence.
Yeah, I think it's what you use that presence for, Andrew, isn't it, as well? Because, you know, I know we're talking about e-commerce specifically, but, you know, that can be a big black hole of investment if you're not careful, making yourself appearing on Google. And you're right, you're never going to compete with the Amazons and the screw fixers of this world in those terms. So I think it's about the fact that the online channel's not going away and how you can best utilise what it brings. Because you might want to use it to generate local footfall to your branch. Or it doesn't have to be full e-commerce. I want to be a national retailer. So I think it's just kind of, you're absolutely right, bringing together the best of what, you know, a local independent brings with the technology that's available to us all now.
There's just so many advantages to it. It's a fraction of the cost to set up. You know, you could be working on it when you're walking around. You can have access to it on your phone. You can measure and report the opportunities that come out of it. It's available 24/7. Are those the things that members are coming to you, Robin, with that sort of feedback? They want help with that?
Yeah, most definitely. And we often have a phrase internally where we say it's your, you know, take Nick and Paul, for example, who've got 5 physical locations each. Some of our members have only got 1 location, but no matter how many locations they have, or stores, trade counters, showrooms, etc., we would say a digital presence, as in the form of a website, is another location, and possibly your most important, because it's certainly the only one that's open 24/7, the only one.
Yeah.
You know, and there's lots of onlys that we could go on, but I'd be stating the obvious. But yeah, so certainly, you know, and as you said, I think it was Tim, you know, it is very cost effective. It's probably the cheapest branch you'll ever set up as well.
I think if I add as well, we are becoming a society that is built on data. You know, whether we like that or not, it's data. That's what drives us. And the nationals, when it comes to data and product data, they can manage that because, as Andrew alluded to with their marketing teams, they've got hundreds of guys and girls dedicated to trawling through that data, keeping it up to date, keeping it fresh. Whereas an independent, if they're looking at an e-commerce platform, they've got to contact each of those suppliers individually. get that product data, refine it, host it. Tomorrow it goes out of date. You know, Bristan, you stop a line, you bring out a new product. They've got to rearrange all of that. They've got to tweak their terms. And how our members really benefit with our e-commerce platform is, of course, the suppliers provide us with their product data that comes into our centralized system on the IPG portal. The suppliers are responsible for keeping that up to date, along with our in-house developers. And our members just toggle it on and off as and when they like to surface it on their websites. So what has become a full-time role for 5-10 people is now a role just for one person, and it's a few hours a month. And yeah, coming back to the data point and how important that is, you know, that's only going to become more, isn't it, as things go on. So from a time perspective, more than anything, that's what members are looking at us for. You know, as Robin said, Paul and Nick have got five branches. I don't know how many members of staff you've got, but 20 or 30. Some independents are one branch. They might have 4 people working there, you know, and they rely on us for that level of resource. And of course, we're happy to provide it.
I mean, for me, e-commerce, you've just got to look at, most of it is all payment up front. So you don't have to give customers accounts and wait for money and everything like that. And you can reach a bigger audience.
Yeah.
And you don't have all the staff overheads and issues and things and fans breaking down and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah, good point.
Bit of a no-brainer.
Okay, if we can now move on to the sort of the pace of life and talking about work and life balancing. About mental health and supporting staff. I think what we need to break it down is to how to improve the work-life balance in terms of reducing stress. As Glenn's just said, Paul and Nick have got maybe 4 people working in their branch, and they're trying to do the job of people far more numbers than that. So can I ask each of you what you're doing as a company to reduce this? That might be quite a nice aspect of it, because obviously there's different amount of staff in each business. And how much are you actually supporting your staff?
Can I kick things off, Tim? Because the honest answer and the brutal answer is for all of us is that we're not doing enough. You know, you can always do more, I'm sure. And I did a little bit of research on this beforehand, and I thought this might help your editorial. So can I give you a couple of stats? Is that okay?
Go on. So
in Britain, in 2019 to 20, so just 1 year, in the UK, 828,000 people suffer from work-related stress, depression or anxiety. That's a huge number. And again, in the UK, in 1 year alone, 17.9 million working days were lost to work-related mental health issues. So it's a big issue, isn't it? And if I was to just change that from work-related mental health issues, and I said it was broken legs or another specific disease, we'd be doing something about it, wouldn't we? You know, we'd be doing something to stop people breaking their legs. It's just that it's this kind of hidden issue that, quite frankly, no one really likes talking about. I think that's fair to say. And a lot of people are not qualified to talk about, and I hold my hands up and say that I'm one of those people. So it's scary when you look at the figures, and yeah, I say we don't do enough. But I think, especially with the pressures of something like COVID coming along, the big concern that I have is the level of interaction that we all have with our families and friends and colleagues. It's gone from seeing your mates down the pub and having a drink with them and telling them about the great things going on in your life and the awful things going in your life, to, quite frankly, not even speaking to them. You know, I'm a typical bloke. Unless I go to the pub and have a pint with them, I'm not going to talk to them. You know, I'm not going to pick up the phone to them and just say, just checking in, how's it all going? And I can talk from personal experience here, because I used to have a business coach, and Robin's probably thinking, no, he didn't. How possible would that be done?
Just worried about your feminine side, Glenn, but I didn't want to mention that.
That's it. And when I used to walk in and see him, he always used to start off with the same question, which is, what's your level of interaction like at the moment? And I always thought, what a strange question to ask. But what he's really saying is, are you having some downtime? Are you speaking to your mum? Are you speaking to your mates? Are you speaking to your colleagues about the general everyday issues that you have? Because you can always, you're focused on work and there's no respite, isn't there? And it's a proven fact that your level of interaction and the better relationships that you have with people, the better health you'll be in, just generally, not in terms of mental health, but health generally. And I think, certainly from my perspective, I've gone from someone who used to go play golf, go to the pub with my mates. As I said, you know, I'm obviously quite keen on going to the pub, and to coming along and lockdown, and that really is severed. You know, you go to work, you come home, you see your wife and your kids, and then it's Groundhog Day. And so I don't have the answers, but I'm massively concerned about that. And you know, no one's going to click their fingers, COVID's going to be solved. I worry about people getting stuck in their ways with that. Truthfully, and I don't know how employers can play a role in that. I'll open that up to everyone else. I'll create the problem, someone else create the solutions.
You make a good point there on the difference between the broken leg and the mental side, because one's physical, one's mental. If you see someone with a broken leg, you do something. If you see someone with a mental problem, it's all about the interaction, the talking about it between employees and the employer. But they don't want to. They still, you know, it's still in this day and age, mental health is still seen as a bit of a taboo subject among people. Although, you know, we had a roundtable debate last year. The debate was all about whether you should actually have a mental health person on your board, because it has got to such a state now with so many people affected by it, that would you have someone in the same way you've got a financial director or you've got a human resources person? Would you specifically have someone to deal with mental health? And you're right, I think with COVID as it is, and people not interacting, it's a very social industry, builders merchant sector, very, very social. And I, for one, can't wait for live events to start, like everybody else sitting on this debate. Until then, we've got to cope, and how are companies coping? How are companies coping? How are you guys dealing with this?
I think we're sort of, I mean, communication's obviously a big thing, you know, so we're, you know, regularly getting communication, sending tips out to managers about, you know, look out for the quiet ones and all that kind of stuff, which is obviously more difficult when, you know, everybody's working from home pretty much. But I guess what we're doing is trying to use the technology to our advantage. So I think one benefit is you can actually communicate more frequently. So we're having much more, you know, probably shorter meetings with more frequency, in order to keep, you know, that team spirit and that morale going. I mean, it's interesting what you said, Tim, about having people on the board, but we're just about to roll out a program of what we call mental first aiders. So, you know, going back to what Glenn said, you know, every business has got first aiders in it for those physical injuries. Why wouldn't you have somebody that's trained to spot similar thing from a mental point of view? So that is something we're about to look to roll out at our business.
I think that's a really good one, and I think we've done the same, Glenn, haven't we?
Yeah, we have.
We hadn't until a year ago, and you know, we just hadn't thought of it.
Right.
I think creating awareness, which is somewhat what you're doing, Tim, isn't it? By putting it on the agenda. You know, this cuts across more than just IPG. It cuts across all of our sector and all other sectors. But I spoke to somebody that works for one of our accountants the other day, and she was working from home, and obviously she answered her phone. I called her mobile, and I said, "How are you getting on?" She said, "Oh, I hate it. They've made me work at home." That was the first thing she said to me. And I thought, you know, we can all understand why they might have made her work at home. But my first then thought was, are they checking that you're okay then? You know, because clearly they may well be right to make her work at home. However, there are implications, I guess, is what we're saying here, on things like that. And if she goes for months on end working from home, you know, it might have implications that might not, to someone like, I mean, there's more than half of us here by looks at working from home, but we're not necessarily all going to have mental health problems. It's not a given that one leads to another, but there's certain triggers that might do. And as Gareth is saying, during this virus, it's that kind of thing is escalating enormously. Just like somebody mentioned broken legs, but in the winter when it's icy, you recall when we used to get ice, but down here in the south. But you know, in the winter when it's icy, people fall over. I mean, I can remember joking apart A&E units being very busy when it's very icy. But that's easier and simpler to understand, and we can physically see it. But yeah, I think that's a really good point, Gareth. You know, it's good to see bigger companies like yourselves doing it. I mean, we should all do it. Yeah, where we can. I think there is
the long-term benefits, because if you put aside the one salary for someone to be on the board and the benefit that they will have, staff will have someone to go to. They can spend their full, you know, their whole week working with people and picking out the signs and then putting solutions in place to anybody who does suffer from mental health. I think the damage it can do if someone's signed off sick with mental health for week after week after week, how much damage is that going to do to the company compared to one member of staff who's that go-to person?
We offer, we try and operate in our business a real open door policy. So kind of, I suppose it comes back down to that family core and that value that we really hold strongly, in that, you know, our Stephen's door, our MD, is always open. He encourages the staff to talk to him on a regular basis, and we all do as managers. And I do think that COVID has heightened levels of anxiety, and I think that it's our duty of care as business leaders to really to wrap our arms around people, to make sure that they're okay and they're dealing with this okay. And we have to do whatever it is that's in our power, whether it's extended time off work, kind of additional deadlines, etc. We have to be lenient, and we have to kind of understand that everybody's needs within the business is different. Someone with children who's having to homeschool is very different to someone who's on their own. You know, that level of communication is really key to working out what each individual needs and catering for them through this and beyond. You know, we said, you know, we have asked people to work from home, but if they are struggling and they don't want to work from home because they can't deal with that sole existence, you know, we haven't shut the doors of the office. You know, if that person is really struggling, we have to kind of work out the safest thing that individual, because your team is and their mental health is so important to keep your business running the best it possibly can be. And there's nothing more upsetting when you know that one of your team members is struggling from a mental health issue. You know, it's yeah. We had something earlier, well, end of last year, and you have to wrap your arms around them. It's the only way.
Yeah, well said, I think. And we often are quite focused on what people have got on their plate from a business or workplace perspective, but you throw something like a global pandemic in the way, and all of a sudden it's not just work, is it? It's your kids, it's your partner, it's your family, it's your mum and dad you're worried about, it's your friends, etc., etc. And that all adds to your level of stress. And there are some particular key signs of stress, and I did some research, Tim. It might be worth knowing these down, but trouble sleeping, racing thoughts, clenching your teeth in your jaw, indigestion, and either a loss of or increased appetite. And it's interesting, isn't it? They're the common signs of stress. And when you become stressed, it all leads to bad decisions, and which is, you know, it's funny, isn't it? All those mental health things all of a sudden impact you from a business. So yeah, interesting, and we've got to look out for those signs with our colleagues. And as you say, Jennifer, wrap your arms around them. Yeah, definitely.
You're not allowed to do that at the moment, are you? So
that's true, from a distance, Tim.
Actually.
Socially distant, Glenn, please.
Yeah, on the flip side, you know, speaking to our staff, they think it's a bloody relief to come into work because obviously we've got a virtual workplace, an actual workplace, and pretty much people need to be there for the business to operate. And if you suggest to people, those that can, to work from home, they don't want it. They're like, oh no, I'm at home all night, I can't go anywhere. And this gives them the opportunity to see and communicate with other people other than their family, and it is a release. I can bear the thought of working from home, especially, as you say, with the kids at home doing the schooling.
Tell us what you really think, Nick.
Yeah, but there is actually that benefit. I wouldn't. I don't know. As an employer, obviously the health and safety is paramount, and I get what Jennifer's talking about, but I suppose I would almost encourage. It goes against government advice, I know that, but I encourage people to go to their workplace and work in a COVID secure environment if they can. I think that would actually be a benefit.
I hear what you're saying, Nick. I totally agree. I think it's important to weigh in those factors, definitely.
Just to let you know, Nick, this will be available to your family, this recording, if you want. In case you want to share them with them. Be written up as well. Okay, on the subject of staff, how do you attract and keep the right staff within your company? I've made some notes here as well, actually, Glenn. You're not the only one who's been in the books. Provide a positive working environment, recognise, reward and reinforce the right behaviour, involve and engage staff, develop skills and nurture potential, evaluate and measure the staff you have. A few ideas there, not quite as statistical as Glenn's, I'm afraid, but has anyone got any points about how you can attract and keep the right staff?
Well, I think the one thing you've missed there is we think the appraisal systems are very, very important for that. Both formal and informal. So we do lots of little informal appraisals with people. And sometimes, we kind of do that not just to attract the staff, but to also cover some of those mental health issues, just make sure they're okay. And so we do plenty of that. But I think the other big one that maybe you didn't mention there was training. We believe strongly in this. So we start with the company objectives and we break that right the way down to departmental objectives and then to individual objectives. And then we work out PDPs for each of the people so that they can deliver their bit against their departmental target, which in turn goes up to the company. Nothing particularly unusual about all that. But I think what we've done now is we're really trying to make it linked in now to accredited occupational qualifications, so that there's something that goes on the individual CV, and as they do more of these, they're empowered to do more within the business, and kind of it's a really positive circle, we find.
And that's a benefit to both you as the company and to the employee. There's continual assessment. It's just a way to talk to each other and iron out any problems you have either side, I guess.
Yeah, and as a result of the training, they feel like they're much more part of the business and contributing to what what that business does right and what it does wrong.
Are you carrying on doing the online training at the moment, David? You've carried on doing the online training for obviously people who can't get into the office? We have, and even we do an amount of online training internally as well. So even though we're the vast majority of people still work with at the company premises, we'd only have probably 10% or so of our staff working externally. Then we still cover the COVID rules by trying to give them online training as well as anything else. Okay, yeah, it was a big one I missed out actually, so thank you for putting me up on that one, David.
Okay.
Anyone else? Any other ways to retain and recruit staff? How do you go about it? bearing in mind that there's going to be quite a few people looking for work going forward.
To help retain them,
choice.
we found in the past that we can make ourselves busy fools, and all that's doing is creating stress for the people that are trying to manage that. Because all of a sudden you can go out there, you can win loads of business, but when the phone starts going and the problems start occurring, it's not good for people. And I think, like I said, becoming a busy fool isn't just detrimental on profits and things, but it's actually detrimental on people's health. And yeah, it's not good.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think from our point of view, Tim, we sort of similar to what David said actually, but obviously having sort of a clearly defined set of values and behaviours as a business, and you try and get that culture across to people when you're interviewing them, and you know, partnering with the right recruitment companies so that they just don't talk a good game, they actually understand what you're after in terms of the right person. So I think, you know, best will in the world, you can have somebody that tears all the doors down and gets the results, but actually cultural fit with your business is quite important. Otherwise people just won't stay for the long term. So, you know, I think that's quite important to us. I think we do similar stuff that David said. You know, regular one-to-ones. You know, we expect all our managers to have one-to-ones every month with their staff, and actually they're probably happening even more frequently, as I said, with COVID at the moment. We have a very clear sort of performance management system or evaluation system, again, some sort of David did. I think the other one we pride ourselves on is our progression planning as well. So people can see what the next step is for them in their career. They can actually plot a path for where they want to go, and then we help them design a development plan that helps them get there. And then, you know, to sort of wrap all that up, we've got quite a simple online reward system. So anybody in our business can nominate somebody for, you know, just doing their day job really well if they want to, or something exceptional they've done to help them. And it's a points-based scheme. You can then spend on, you know, various rewards through the same portal. So, and that seems to have gone down really well. We only launched that a few months ago.
How are you guys coping with, at the IPG, we tend to all get together every couple of months and have a bit of a staff do, you know, whether it's something fun, just like going to play crazy golf, or, you know, going to watch a show or something. And obviously that's difficult at the moment. How are you guys coping with like the social side of work socials? Are you guys doing anything?
Yeah, we've done a few bits, Glenn, at Bristan. I mean, we had a sort of digital mini conference just before Christmas. So I basically sent everybody out a party in a box, and we tried to keep it a bit sort of not just talking about what the plans are for next year and the business results and everything else, but was a social as well. And you know, I've still got some parts of my team on furlough, but we are having a get together at the end of each month just to keep them in touch with the business and be able to sort of chew the fat really. And it's never the same, but you know, you work with what you've got, I guess. It's a bit different for these guys, Paul and Nick, I guess, because you are seeing your staff still, even though you can't socialise with them, I guess. You might not want to.
Okay, moving on. Complete change of tack. We're going to look at renewables and green business, the importance of being green, and life after plastic. I mean, problems with plastic has been going on for years and years and years, brought to our attention on the TV and in the mass media as well. What are the benefits of being a green business, and what have you done to get rid of plastic within your particular company? Anyone want to start with that question?
I'm looking forward to David and Jennifer's response, because they both have plastics in their range.
That's true. Although David, of course, gets it all is from windows, so it's all recycled, isn't that right, David?
That's good.
Glenn, you've got a great memory. Yeah, I think that's the way we've tried to cope. We've tried to cope by, and even since you came down, Glenn, or came up, we've dramatically increased the level of recycling that we do. So we're now at a stage where I think we're probably yeah, well over 80%, 80 to 90% of the product we manufacture has a significant recycled element in it.
Amazing.
That's the way we approach it, and kind of, you know, we justify that to ourselves in the fact that if you're going to replace plastic, you know, you're going to have to, are you going to replace it with a natural resource? Well, you know, argument can be that it's as difficult to produce those environmentally friendly as it is to produce the plastic in the first place if you're doing the level of recycling that we're trying to do. So it's not an easy one. I think, yeah, thanks for that, Andrew. But yeah, that's the way we're trying to cope with it. We're trying to use a lot of recycled raw material, and we do a massive amount of recycling ourselves of our own waste, etc.
Was that what you call a hospital pass, that one?
That was a good one.
I think so.
I caught that under the ribs.
Jennifer, I think you were thrown under the bus as well then by
no, it was supposed to be, I echo kind of what was just said, in that, you know, you have to be able to use recycled products where you can. I think you have to, that's what you kind of, you can't change the world, so you have to do what you can do. So for example, our overlay boards are made out of recycled paper, and then the excess produced in the manufacturing process is then refed into the next round of manufacturing of those boards. So and I think it's, you know, looking at packaging, how do you kind of remove plastic from packaging? I think that's really key. It's looking at those quick wins as well as kind of the bigger picture, because you know, it's very easy to go with the norm. So yeah, it's looking at things on a multifaceted level, I suppose.
Do you think the problems that some of the major supermarkets have in reducing their plastics as well? They've set targets that are like 2 or 3 years, 4 years down the line. They can't do something immediately. So if you've got a smaller manufacturer or supplier trying to come up with solutions, it's a very difficult thing to do. So maybe if we look at maybe sort of the green side, what's the advantages of being a green company? You know, what does it do for your customers, for your people who use your products, that you're seen to be green?
And obviously you've probably got, you know, one advantage is obviously it will appeal to that more green conscious consumer. So there are consumers that want to buy products that are less harmful to the environment. But let's all be honest, it's also, there's a cost of some of these things. So if you can reduce that cost, it's beneficial to your business. I mean, there's probably 3 areas that, you know, I could reference with our business. Obviously, the product itself is water usage for us, which is interesting because, I mean, if you take an average shower head, so it produces, 15 litres a minute. Most of us spend on average about 10 minutes in the shower, so that's 150 litres of water gone per person every day. And so we try things like putting flow restrictors into the hoses. We put shower heads and handsets on the product that you can alter it to reduce the water usage. But installers will often take them out because actually the consumer wants a drenching shower. So that's a bit of the challenge. Actually, it's more the consumer behaviour that needs to change rather than the actual products.
You raise a really good point there, Gareth, because I struggle to see how this is a consumer's responsibility, you know, or even maybe a supplier's responsibility. This is God's honest truth. This is the only New Year's resolution I've ever kept. I made it on the 1st of January 2017, and it was that I would never buy a drink in a plastic bottle again. And so every time I'm out and about, whether it's a petrol station, if I do buy a drink, it will always be a can, i.e. metal, because that's much better for the environment, more easily recyclable. But that's a decision that I've made, of course. And if you go into a petrol station or a shop, it's plastic everywhere. It's plastic, plastic, plastic. And what you've done there, Gareth, is great at Bristan, and you've tried to make a change, and then the consumer will or won't keep it. But I really think it's the government's responsibility to push this and enforce that change. I really do. I feel quite strongly about that, because until they make that stance, whether it's about packaging or the actual product itself, I just don't see there'll be change. Supermarkets just say 3 or 4 years time. It's always 3 or 4 years time, isn't it? It's always 10 years time. So yeah, I really think the government have got to incentivise this or penalise it through the tax system, maybe. I don't know how that works.
But we need more education on it, because I don't know about you, but I finish a margarine tub and I look at it and I think, I know it's made of plastic, but as you're talking about plastic bottles, Glenn, I'm under the impression plastic bottles are easily recyclable. And I'm sort of like, actually, I mean, we try and reuse our plastic bottles all the time. We have a plastic bottle of water and it just gets washed out and left on the side. And next time somebody wants to go out, I go and play golf, I'll fill that up. It saves me £1 at the pro shop anyway. But, it's obviously reducing it. But there's not enough education. I'm probably talking a bit more general, but there's not enough education. I had pot noodle for lunch, or noodle pot. And again, I'm looking at it and is it recyclable? Is it not? And I'm not actually sure which bin. Pardon?
Not very clear sometimes. Often it's
it's not very clear. And even our products that we sell, it would be a lot easier if we could understand a lot more what was more recyclable and what was obviously less sustainable. And then at least we can pass that message on to our customers, because I think the customer base, again, like the online stuff coming through, people are definitely becoming greener and definitely thinking more about the environment and sustainability. And, you will get questioned by your customers a lot more on that in the future. And we need to be prepared for that.
You are correct, Nick. I mean, the government are starting to play their part with environmental product directives. So as a supplier, we are going to have to be measured on our energy usage, our recyclability, sustainability, end of life, the whole circular economy, and all suppliers are going to eventually have to do that. The bigger contractors are already requesting that information. That's not filtered down to local installers or consumers. Recycling of plastic, I mean, you've touched on it there, is so difficult because there are so many different types of plastic. And you can't mix some with others, and therefore it is never ever going to be fully circular, where you can just keep recycling it. So as a copper manufacturer, we have got complete circularity. So you can recycle it forever and ever and ever, never loses its properties. You don't ever see it thrown into the sea or into a skip or into a dustbin because it's got some value. People would take it back out again because it's worth something. So, another phrase that I'm coming across more and more as I get into this green issue is the ethical purchasing gap. And this is where people want to do the right thing, but the price is prohibitive. And although they will say we are greener than green can be, and we're only going to do this green product and that green product, when the price is so much more, they tend to go back on their word. So I think over time the government will close that. I think they're going to be left with no choice, because there's going to be mounting pressure for more green things and certainly more sustainable products and projects. So there are certain housing developments taking place at the moment that are completely plastic free. There is no plastic on there. That's not just packaging, that's products. And one would think that that's going to spread.
Yeah, you're right, Andrew. The government do need, as Glenn knows, I just got a Tesla. And, one of the factors of getting a Tesla was obviously getting it through the business and the capital allowance at 100%, Obviously, you know, things like driving into London, no congestion charge. Even apparently, I can park in London after 10 minutes for free now for 2 or 3 hours, which is brilliant. Not that I can go to London.
Where? Yeah.
But you know, that it just proves the point of that incentive, and albeit you know, it was obviously financial, but there was a lot of me saying I'm not a particularly green person. I'm not, you know, that way, but there is a lot of me that wants to try and do the right thing. And obviously, if there is a financial benefit, it really does help. And, you know, that's got to filter through to our industry. And the more incentives there are, will make it a lot easier for us to sell those greener products.
Yeah. Here's a question for you, Nick and Paul. Do you sell many heat pumps? Is that increased, or is it still really boiler focused still?
For us, boiler focused, because I'll be honest, we don't really concentrate on heat pumps. Yeah, something we need to look at, definitely. But
how about you, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, Glenn, I'm the worst person to ask about products. I know that we sell heat pumps. I think an obstacle to selling heat pumps, a little bit alluding to what Gareth was saying earlier, is there are companies in the market obviously going direct to the installers. A lot more on the renewable, and I think that is probably a big obstacle to the merchants selling renewable, you know, heat pumps and ground source and all that sort of stuff, because I don't know what the percentage is, but I would imagine I reckon probably 60, maybe 70% is sold direct from either the manufacturer or the manufacturer's distributor to the installer, obviously without going through the merchant.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Nick, but I wouldn't worry about it too much because it's so niche at the moment. So if it was mainstream, if you found that, you know, 60 or 70% of bathroom taps were going direct, I'd be as worried as you would be. But it is very niche, and I don't want to be outdone by Tim or Glenn, so I'll quote you a statistic. So last year, there were 1.6 million gas boilers sold in the UK. There's about 20 odd million in the housing stock right now installed. There was 1.6 million new units sold through obviously various channels. Heat pumps, 30,000.
Wow.
It is minuscule. However, that number will grow, and in 10 years' time, we won't even be talking about gas boilers because they won't be allowed to be sold. So 10 years is not long. Say that, you know, talk to a 17-year-old. You know, it really isn't. It really comes down fast. I mean, you know, it really comes around fast. So yeah, you know, a lot of it depends on everybody in the industry, and I'd strongly encourage all of our members to be involved in renewables because we want a part of that action. It's a big part of the future action and something that IPG already are involved in, but we'll escalate that enormously.
Just with my different hat on, when I was on Heating and Plumbing Monthly, we did numerous stories about the input of renewables going forward. And the problem was that all the installers were doing the training, spending a fortune on the training. There was no demand for the products that needed to be fitted. So they just gave up. They'd ask their friends.
It's a really good point, Tim, isn't it? It's a bit like, I don't know, if you opened a vegan ice cream shop 10 years ago, you would have gone bust. Yeah. Whereas if you do it today, you'd probably have the queue outside. Timing in a market is absolutely crucial, more than a lot of us realise. And you know that. And I have every sympathy for people that think they've got it right and maybe don't quite get the timing right. Sometimes timing is an element of luck in it. But
it's also about what the government's offering, and they had the renewable heat incentive.
Yes,
they were offering 400 quid off a heat pump to members of the public.
Yeah,
the take up of that was minuscule. So if you're offering money off, and okay, the amount of money you get back per unit nowadays is minuscule compared to how it was at the beginning. Kind of offering them such a large percentage, there's no take up either. then you really are fighting a battle. But as you said, by 2025, was it 2030, you're not going to be able to install gas boilers in modern homes, in new homes. So there will be the demand there going forward. But until it's compulsory to do that, you're still going to be fighting that battle, I think. And people are going to.
That's the issue Glenn's talking about, though, isn't it? Because as Jennifer said, as suppliers, we're all trying to do our bit. So, you know, we did something like we reduced the thickness of our pallet wrapping, the plastic on there, and it saves about 7,000 kilograms usage a year. But it's a small, you know, pinprick really compared to the impact you need to make. So, you know, unless, like we talked about in cars, the government have actually forced that through legislation.
I was thinking, you said, as Nick was saying, you partly, if the government hadn't done that through the tax system on a Tesla, a lot of people wouldn't have them now. But, you know, and were Tesla right to do what they did 12 years ago? I'd like to think so, you know, and I'd like to think they were really forward thinking. And there's certainly a lot of them about now, and good luck to them. Of course, you know, you have to be able to make a loss sometimes for many years, like they have. If they hadn't have had the financial backing they've had, they wouldn't have been able to do that. They would have been one of those companies that Tim referred to that did it too early. And whether there's two downsides, you either simply don't survive, or as Tim was alluding to, you might survive, but you might just be put off and think, well, we won't bother with that anymore. So, for example, maybe the manufacturer's a wrong example, but a car dealership, a multi-car dealership that might have said, oh, we'll put some electric vehicles in 10 years ago, might have said, do you know what, that didn't work, we'll give it up. Whereas if we were all starting a car dealership tomorrow and we were the 7 or 8 directors, I'm sure a few of us would be saying, where's the electric car bay going to be? You know, where's the charging points outside? You know, we would, wouldn't we? For sure we would. You know, and so I think we can look at those other sectors and say that's definitely going to be the case.
I think in summary, if you're a green business, it's good for your brand, because everybody wants to show that they've got sustainable practices within their brand. Which moves me nicely onto Made in Britain, which I think is the final question. I'm conscious of time and everyone's really busy, but just on the final subject, Made in Britain, what are the advantages of having that kind of moniker, I guess? What does it do for your company, the fact that products are actually made in the UK, and what benefits does it have to you as a company? I've got lower carbon footprint, quicker turnaround, supporting local economy, ability to see a production in person, low minimum order quantities. It costs more, but you know, it closes a gap, and then it's obviously the ethical side of things. So, anyone got anything they want to say regarding this final question?
Yeah, I mean, with regards to Made in Britain, I think it's become ever so clear over this last year how much we rely on imports. You know, when we had all these problems you see the lorries stacked up trying to get into the country, we can't get stock to supply our customers, or the manufacturers can't get the parts to make their boilers or taps or whatever it is. So to be able to deal with a supplier that's manufacturing it within the UK and has got access to control the supply for it as well, it's a huge thing, especially for this next, after Brexit and everything, these next few years.
I agree.
Sorry,
I think you'll see a significant repatriation of manufacturing back into the UK. We're certainly doing it our side. We've traditionally bought a lot in from the Far East, and I just don't think those supply chains are going to be robust enough, fast enough. So a lot of our strategy will be based on manufacturing a lot more of our goods in the UK, and that's started already. We've sort of fast tracked that, and we will continue to invest a lot in that in terms of our strategy and our monies, because I think, and it's a good thing for the industry, because it'll be less about price and it'll be more about quality and availability and service levels, and I think that will be good for everybody.
Nick and Paul, do your customers ever come in and say, I want something made in Britain? You know, do they ever dictate that to you? There's a, you know, I need a tap, I want a British tap, you know?
Not to my knowledge.
No.
No, not at all.
Sorry, Nick.
I think that's a good point, Glenn. I think you raise a good point there, Glenn, that we manufacture in Britain, and I am so pleased that we do, especially now. But I don't make any great noise about it, and that's down to me. It's not down to the IPG or any of our customers. But I do believe that although we have recognisable brands in the trade, if they knew for sure that they were manufactured in Britain, I think they would buy that over an import and would be prepared to pay a bit more for it. Not a lot more, but a bit more.
Yeah.
So it's down to the manufacturer, I think, to shout that from the rooftops and to create that. It's not perception, it's reality, but to get that reality to drop and to stay with the installer, so that they go and ask for more British manufactured product.
I think there's a lot to be said in terms of kind of customer demand, isn't there? So we would love to be a sole kind of British product company. However, the components that are driven from a demand perspective from the installer, they want those trusted products like Griffiths, for example, and having a supplier, a component to feed into a system which has such brand recognition and brand desirability from a perspective, that's not going to happen overnight. So I think it has to be driven, has to be shouted about from the manufacturer, but also driven from a consumer perspective as well. And getting them over, getting an installer to use a UK pump over a Griffiths pump, that's a challenge. Not one to be shied away at, but a challenge.
Okay. Anything else from anybody?
I think there's a couple of reasons why people might want to buy British. The traditional one is keeping the coffers, keeping the money in the tills of UK businesses. Would you say that's probably the traditional one? But I think there's a more modern one, which is what I'd loosely call food miles. Buy butter from New Zealand or butter from even France or Denmark or somewhere, which is hugely nearer. I'd probably pick the latter, and I think that's where we probably all need to understand it better, like where the raw materials, aforementioned components. I might choose to say I might buy a product. It could be this phone. It isn't, but because this is Korean, I think. But I could buy a product that I say is made in Britain, but if all the components come from Korea or China or New Zealand, then you've got that food miles angle of people would so again, coming back to Tim's point about the green, I think the green thing creeps into that as well. I really do.
Yeah, I agree.
But the reason the butter came from New Zealand, Robin, was probably, weirdly enough, don't I understand, but probably because it was cheaper.
Yeah, quite absolutely. Yeah.
And that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Nick, how would you know? Because you were talking about margarine cartons earlier on. You're a margarine man, aren't you? He's gone.
Oh, he's that.
Sorry, somebody was ringing me, and it came through on the iPad. Don't know how.
Okay.
Yeah, so the crux of it does come down to price, unfortunately. And what with this virus, especially initially, rightly or wrongly in a way, everybody's just like, let's not buy anything from China anymore. Let's keep it all British and all that. You don't hear so much about that. But it's interesting what David was saying about. I wonder how competitive David's business is going to be by, getting all that stuff made in Britain compared to, what was going on before. Is that really going to work for you, David?
I do believe it is. I think there's all sorts of there's all sorts of other costs that you don't necessarily factor in when you're bringing something from as far as that, and you're shifting the emphasis to, you know, the actual material cost of the product might be a bit more sat on your shelf, but the other benefits and costs that you've saved by doing it that way, you know, not necessarily outweigh, but the balances are pretty good. We're doing quite a lot of cost benefit exercises on all that, so we're pretty confident that it's going to be a strong way forward for us, and I think that you know, we're going to be a long while before we get past this these problems we've got that linked into both Brexit and COVID.
It could be a very good opportunity for the British companies to get ahead, you know, because we've seen all these letters coming through about extra charges for containers from China, and it's just gone up to the roof. People are putting in surcharges and everything like that. So these companies that are manufacturing in Britain and were that little bit expensive or a little bit more expensive may now all of a sudden become really
I think that might happen over the long term, Paul. I think the container costs will settle down because that's more to do with supply.
It will.
Just after the recovery from COVID. But I think your point's right. You know, as these economies like China and India and wherever get more advanced, they'll need to service their own markets first.
Yeah, if you're buying a shower door and it's normally 5% more because it's made in Britain and nobody normally wants it, then all of a sudden they try it because it's cheap.
Sure.
You might think, actually, I'll stick with that. I won't go back to that.
Yeah.
Could happen.
Well, it'll be down to the British public to buy into it, a little bit like sustainability. And, you know, the British public are buying into sustainability. And if they can buy into buying from Britain, then they will be prepared to absorb a small premium for that. Not a massive one, for sure. But
I think that's the key bit, isn't it, Nick? You know, I think we're all saying the same thing. I think it's how much is the difference? If it's a small percentage, you know, if it's a small percentage, if you're into organic food and you pick up an apple and it's a couple of pence more for a basket of apples, you just wouldn't hesitate, probably. But if it's twice or three times your price, you think, how can a bit of broccoli be 3 times the price? You know, you query it, don't you? And I think if it's 5% and that 5% becomes 4% or 3%, then price doesn't completely disappear, but it becomes less of an issue. But if you're talking 50%, 100%, then of course it still is an issue.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It depends on the product as well, Robin. You know, because where it makes sense, we will source stuff from the UK. So our acrylic baths, some of our furniture, stuff like that, where, you know, you don't want to be shipping big boxes of air around.
Yeah,
that still makes sense. So you know, but sadly, I can't ever see a situation where somebody will be manufacturing volume brassware in the UK again anytime soon.
No.
I know. Who knows? Yeah.
On that positive note.
Yeah.
So thank you very much indeed for your contributions. Really, really appreciate it. And just looking forward. Hope you all stay safe and well, and we come out the other side.
Yeah, I'll just echo that, Tim, and I know Robin will. But thanks everyone. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you all did as well. It was really good. So David, Nick, Gareth, Jennifer, Andrew, and Paul, thank you so much. Appreciate it, and catch up soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good evening.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye.